Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy, and I'm not prepared. Seriously, tonight I am not prepared. I have spent most of the day today in listing mode, in working in a thrift store for 5 years. I have accumulated, and my heart is attached to quite a few of these pieces, and they give me great joy. They add to this life of mine, and they do, because just in the way they lighten my mood. Sometimes they give me a giggle as to how they came into my life. Sometimes it's excitement because I scored, right? And I am a thrifter. In growing up as a little kid, even in school, I had the name secondhander as a nickname in school. Oh my goodness, that was so brutal. The kids found out that my mother bought our clothes at the thrift store. Thank goodness I was the oldest child, because we hand me down too, all the way down. And, I really took offense to that. I took a big hit in the shame department. And, shame, you know, coming and looking in at some of those events, conversations, experiences that I've had throughout my life. Shame has been, I'm going to say, um, a thorn, right? It's like a thorn, because I know it's always surfacing, and I know it's always been used by others, and possibly, misery loves company, right? The hurt people. Maybe I did that too. You know what I mean? That maybe in those unkindnesses that we do to each other, that we don't recognize what we truly do to each other. Up until maybe a half a dozen years or so, I have always thought this to be a singular experience. A lonely experience? Maybe not, because in my codependency, I have adapted and conquered. And, I have always made sure that I've always had at least one person in my life, somebody to confide in, somebody to talk to, somebody to have fun with, somebody to travel with. And I've always managed to have that one special person. The person always had similarities in the things that I like to do, right? I picked up people who were like me. Even my own husband, I wasn't even woke in the time. And my husband found me. And, again, just like my father, I wish that, right, I was in that state or frame of mind, or that season in my life where I'm at right now, that I might have been able to have these conversations with these men, my father, my husband, you know, my best friend, who I felt so connected to, and I couldn't understand it, and him, me, and yet that connection was so entangled that we never figured it out. We never had that opportunity. We shined on each other, but we just didn't know why we were shining on each other because we were so different. But they were in my life. These people that I loved, these people who loved me, they were in my life. I always had that one person. And, in this moment, I don't. And I have to be honest in that, not just honest on my platform, but I have to be honest to myself in that. For the first time in my life, I'm truly alone. And see the smile? And I'm not in sure footedness, understanding whether I should be recognizing this as a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe I have been off in my choices and in my judgment of character. It's possible, right? But I don't think so because this was always connected in my decision as to who was going to be in my life. And like I said, I was perfectly fine. The last people in my life were less buzz, right? Less pain, less judgment, less bullying, less unkindness. And this is the way I looked at it. So when I was by myself, when I was adventuring by myself or sitting by myself, or even now in recognizing that I am truly on my own, that I didn't recognize that that's possibly where I wanted to be. I wanted to be there. But why did I want to be there? Because these are things I'm thinking about. It is in those experiences that I had throughout my life, those feelings that hurt my feelings, those, right? Because it is the feelings, it's not words. Sticking stones can break my bones, but it's the intent, right? Of the name calling, right? Those are just words, but it's the intent, it's the feeling, it's the combination of the thoughts, because that's the partnership, right? And if a partnership moves that way, it's going to be really hard going down the road and being a good judge of characters because we look at the outside, right? We look at how people look, we look at people, how they act, how they talk, how they treat each other, right? But not necessarily looking at how we treat ourselves, right? Because if you're not treating yourself badly, right? You're not treating yourself badly. You don't talk badly to yourself. You don't beat yourself up when you make mistakes. When you hurt people, you don't apologize. You don't try to make amends. And in that partnership with you, with yourself, right? That's a team. That's a team game, right? I may have been like that at one time, but we're going to have to go back decades probably to find that character. Maybe not that far back, right? Hasn't been too long for me. Half a dozen years waking up to some of these ideas. And I suspect I treated myself like everybody else treated me. And that's the truth. And in that pedaling and that little bit of movement, what I want to make for myself, it's a learning process for me, right? Because it leaves me in confusion because it's very easy for me to go, mush, Cindy, do this, work harder, right? Right? And then I stress myself out. And then all those feelings that really confused me, that scared me, that made me be standoffish, made me not want to be part of the team, right? It was because I was uncomfortable, and it is in those experiences, conversations, and adventures that I've had during the course of my life. But I'm telling a different story now. I'm creating a different story now. So I have to look at things differently because it didn't work for me back then. So I experiment, right? I delve in. I do a lot of contemplation. I did a lot of it today. I did so much of it that when I went to make a cup of coffee, I looked at the clock and went, "Oh my goodness, I forgot I haven't even done my live show today because I was so involved in what I was doing." But, you know, in that contemplation today, it was something that I've been working out for a very long time, over a year, I think, because I didn't get it. Some of these dynamic relationships that are in my life right now. And because of the lessons that I take, not just from lessons that I take online or lessons that I get out of books or lessons that I get out of conversations or feedback, right? Or stumbling on to some of these realizations. It's in that partnership that, you know, just because somebody is woke, it doesn't mean that they're good, right? That they're on the right path. They are human souls that we are supposed to be hanging out with because again in that untangling of the wires, some people are right managing to get that work in and some people aren't. And ignorance is no excuse moving forward. It's all the time, it's so clear, ignorance is no excuse. So when I say I'm treading water, I'm treading water because I know there ain't going to be a lot of chances for me that maybe possibly there might have been chances for others, right? That these lessons that I'm picking up now is what's going to serve me to serve you, right? So this realization today, just because somebody is woke, it doesn't mean that they're a good person. And so I went back and I looked at some relationships and there it was. There it was. And I went, oh my goodness. And not even far back. I didn't even have to go far back. Even in most recent past to bump in to the realization that some of these people in my life who I shared in conversation that, maybe in my own way, I helped them to move forward. And they were interested and they were listening and right, but I wasn't. And then you wake up to a different realization, a different understanding, and you go, oh my goodness, did I put my foot in my mouth? Did I waste my time? Did I waste somebody else's time? And is that what I'm talking about when I'm talking about how we feel like sandpaper with each other sometimes, that we just don't rub each other well at all because it's in that partnership, right? Cindy, right? I can take it. Fine, bring it on. You want to carry this on? Fine, we'll carry it on. I'm not somebody who turns the other cheek, but I let things go once the lesson is laid out like that, right? But I'm not that person anymore. And so when other characters try to drum that out of me, right? Or trigger me because in my openness I shared and those vulnerabilities are known. And because I feel intent, I recognized when those vulnerabilities are being poked. And then I stop and I look and I go, but I thought we were kind of walking the same path together for a little while. What happened? Right? What happened? And it was kind of eye opening. It's kind of eye opening. And it's not like it's bad energy. It's not like it's evil and dark and no it's just something that's moving differently, and in the jealousy and in the spitefulness sometimes in that reckoning, that understanding that we do rub each other like sandpaper, but we don't exactly know why that happens, but we know it happens. And when it happens, it's an understanding. It's letting us know that's not somewheres where we're supposed to be, that's something might not appreciate us, right? And those other parts of us might not appreciate that. So, as much as I'm having a conversation, human to human, that those other parts of us are going at it. I don't know, right? But there is an agitation there, an agitation that shouldn't be there if we're all supposed to be moving in the same direction and creating the best human being we possibly can, because we're not treating this human being well, and we're not treating these human beings well. And that's a learned experience. That's probably been going on in my own family at the very least for a very long time, generations and generations at the very least, right? Pull it right back to the main branch, right? I was coming in late. I was just making a cup of coffee when I recognized I hadn't done my live show. I didn't have a topic, but it's kind of neat that I hit that live button, right? I just hit because I was gonna be after midnight, and then that doesn't count, and that means I missed today, and making it up by 2 lives on the next day, it just doesn't do it. I would do it because, right, those are the lessons that we have to give ourselves, but I would have been disappointed in myself. But that shame, right? There's a difference between disappointment and shame. Just like there's a difference between guilt and shame, because shame is something you feel for something that you've done, right? Guilt is not shame, but guilt is like a feeling like you've done something wrong, and you don't even necessarily have to know what you've done wrong, but it's just kind of under the surface. Shame, you always know where that's coming from, right? Because that's a strong, strong feeling. Shame, cheating on your wife, cheating on your husband, right? If you want a good indication of what shame feels like, right? If you have a heart in any aspect, you'll know what that word shame is. But guilt sometimes, when you promise somebody you're going to go to a concert with them, and then that moment morning you woke up with 103 temperature and you just can't even put your weight onto your feet. That's not shame. You feel bad. You feel guilty because now your friend has to go by themselves, right? Maybe that's not a good analogy because if you're anything like me, you would take that concert ticket or whatever it was and you would give it to who you were going with and say, take somebody, take somebody else, right? Take somebody who couldn't afford it. Take somebody who really wants to go. So probably that wasn't a good analogy, but the idea of the guilt, because you're still going to feel bad because maybe you were best friends and you had dinner plans and right maybe the boyfriends were going and right now the boyfriend doesn't want to go because you're not going. There is that sense of guilt in that, but it's nobody's fault. I mean, it's not like you can help it. You're not going to have 103 temperature, possibly not even know why you have 103 temperature, and then it could be something terrible, and you spread it to all your friends, and then you're in a concert with 10,000 people. Maybe it's just like you're spreading it everywhere. Maybe you're the catalyst. Maybe I'm the catalyst, right? We never, we never know in that. Okay, so let's pull it back to the main branch of the tree. So in my contemplation, I recognize that, you know, just because, right? Somebody loves God, right? That somebody it doesn't mean they're going to love you. It doesn't mean it. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to hurt you because again, right? Hurt people. And, they'll bring you down to their level so that you can better understand them, right? Have a different perspective, right? Than thinking they're going to take you off your high horse in that. And again, it's usually jealousy and resentment, and, right? Going up. That's the way it was within my in my family. But of course, I believe that those were part of the lessons. That a lot of those lessons were meant to happen. Again, those other parts of me chose the story that was going to be played out. But Cindy had some choices in that, right? And maybe I'm 100% to blame for why those other parts of me couldn't surface a lot sooner than they did. But do I feel shame for that? No. Do I feel guilty for that? I do. Because even though I'm not to blame, I did play a part in that. I still play a part in that, right? And but I don't think I'm the majority in that playing out of what happened, and that's the truth. But it's my problem now, right? What do they say? Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save me. Isn't that a terrible? It's such a sad thing to say to somebody. It really breaks people, and you know, every time I hear one of the thought leaders say something like that, it's disheartening. But again, maybe it's part of the lessons to pull you down and get you to the ground so it can give you an opportunity to build yourself up again. I don't know, right? It doesn't trigger me, but maybe just in that feeling bad, that's the trigger because not every trigger has to get you crazy mad or crazy sad or heartbroken. Sometimes it's just like, really? Okay, right? Because what are you going to do over that spilt milk? All you can do is have that realization and just move forward from that, right? Okay, let me have a sip of my coffee. Make a good cup of coffee. Yep. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about that. I didn't even want to say anything about that, but that's what came out, and that's what we're going to run with. Okay, maybe something will come in after that. I'm just going to turn the light on because I always forget to do that. And then we're going to pull our cards, and we're going to have a couple of minutes just on a perspective, maybe in something in my day, maybe it's something for somebody else. Maybe we can ask, right? What's the most important that we should be kind of playing with right now, right? Contemplating now, taking action on now, right? Maybe it's just a recognition, right? Maybe we're just totally blank on something, and it is crucial that we know a little bit about it, right? So that we can better prepare for whatever it is. Okay, here's the card, people. Wow. This is kind of neat that we got this card today because a couple of the lessons today were on this topic, and I made a mental note that I was going to turn everything off and I was just going to sit for a few minutes and put in a little bit of contemplation and a few affirmations maybe. If you don't know what affirmations is, it's kind of is it a wish list? It doesn't necessarily have to be anything for yourself, you know. It's affirmations is just to bring you up to a higher state of feeling than where you might have been, because lots of times it's in that self-talk that we do to ourselves that we kind of make ourselves miserable, right? And so if you kind of talk it out, right? Talk it into reality. And, I have a little book here. I should pull it out one day. I haven't used it in so long. And my affirmations have been slacking a little bit. So maybe this is one of the indicators. The word we got tonight was gratefulness, right? Remember, I said today I was going to make a little list of things to be grateful, but I guess seeing we have this word right now, and you can think for yourself the number one thing, the number one thing that you can think of, and give a little bit of gratitude to that, a little bit of gratefulness for something that might have put you in a better state to make a little bit of movement for yourself. Maybe it was something that helped you in working in some of those dynamic relationships that you have, just like it did for me, right? That gratefulness, that number one gratefulness, it's strange because that has to go to my dad, right? And I'm saying it's strange because my father was, right, one of my greatest loves in my entire life. These lessons that I take in, and I'm saying the gratefulness to my dad because in the lessons that I take now, they are nothing in comparison to the lessons in the evidence of my dad's life, right? I don't remember I remember deep conversations, but I didn't recognize them as mindset. I didn't recognize them as mindfulness. I didn't, right? Um, I don't know if he tried to lead me in that directions, but because, you know, when I woke up to some of these ideas, I automatically went back there and it just instantly I went, oh my goodness, right? The characters, the books my dad loved, the quotes that he brought his kids up on. We were brought up on quotes. I don't know anybody who is brought up on quotes, but those are the values, aren't they? So when we talk about values, my dad knew a lot of quotes, and that's not to say I was faithful to all those quotes, all those values. And you guys know that I'm not, because you know I don't turn the other cheek, right? I don't crawl down people's throat. But I believe in course correction, and I believe that, when somebody does something wrong, something that damages somebody's emotional, physical, or mental well being, that they have to be held accountable for that. And quite often we don't hold our people accountable, do we? You know, and it's this idea that they could just move on with their lives and then go ahead and do that exact same thing that they did to you to somebody else. And if they were to do that, when we were talking about guilt and shame, uh, that would have to be shame on me for that one, wouldn't it? Uh, because I have to take accountability for that, because I could have stopped it by not turning the other cheek, by having a conversation, at the very least, letting that person know, right? That you know, right? And I am that person, and I believe it to be the right thing to do. And yes, right? Sometimes it feels like sticking your foot in your mouth, your fist in your mouth, or your right? You're just hanging yourself, because in truth telling, and that's what it is, in truth telling, nobody likes to be put in place. Nobody does. Nobody. And some people are worse than others. And I don't know where I fit in that, because I work really hard not to be triggered. But I get it. When I'm triggered, I make decisions like, take this job and right? Right? Grateful. And I'm not going to say better late than never, because the lesson might not be fully learned, but maybe the lesson is learned. And when I do say take this job, and I'm doing the right thing and not the wrong thing, because of that partnership on the other end that is nipping and pinching and biting and reversing the cause, right? Reversing the reasoning in that, so that somebody else, right, looks like the problem rather than the problem itself. And that's why it's necessary sometime not to turn the other cheek. I have been course corrected many, many times. It's not fun. In fact, it's very humbling if you need it. And if you're humbled by that, that's a good thing. That's a honorable thing. It's when you become defensive and, well, I'm not going to go that route, because lots of times in being the scapegoat, we learn to over explain things because we don't get a say. We're always getting blamed for everything, right? And sometimes to maybe not to be to blame or get in trouble for that, but we do it because it's the truth, right? And yeah, you may look make me look like I'm wrong in this, right? Quite possibly. That could happen. And quite often, when somebody's down there, they will pull up there and bring down there, just so that it's even keel in that. I don't want to lose my train of track, bring it back to me, main branch. Oh my goodness. It's too much time on my hands. It's too much siphoning through the content and pulling it apart and putting it back together, right? But we have to recognize, and I'm pulling it back now, right? That that gratefulness, which is the word that we pulled, that gratefulness is possibly that recognition and that partnership that we have with ourselves, which is the priority. And I feel guilty. I let Cindy down, maybe. I feel that guilt. Guilt is different than shame, right? I feel bad because that was the roof over my head. But Cindy made that choice because of that partnership that she has with herself. I don't mean to talk in third person there. That I has a different existence in that, right? That even though I have this relationship, this has this relationship outside of me 100%, right? That maybe those other parts of me are grateful to have that off the plate, to have these characters out of my vicinity, out of this space that I share with something that might have been, right? Because that's our emotions, right? That's telling us, like, get away from this, right? Or something's fishy, something's not right. That's our hypervigilance in that, right? Grateful for that. But that's again, this list that I said that I was going to make, it came across my path a couple of times in the content today. And I just like, okay, Cindy, we're going to make a list of all the things that you're grateful for. And what did I do? I just went on to the next lesson or the next project. And like I said, I've been listing all day. Oh my goodness. I'm hoping I'm going to have a big clean out of this apartment. Would be fantastic if I could thin it out a little bit, right? We're working on it. We're working on it. I haven't made that list. So maybe that's my promise to myself tomorrow and in my accountability in my brand and to you guys, that you guys can see that I will hold myself accountable. And tomorrow I will make that list of gratefulnesses. And let's say that list has to be 12. 12 is a good number. 12, 12 things that I'm grateful for. And maybe if you want that challenge yourself, maybe you can do that too. And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, right? Yeah, gratefuls. Hello, Eugene. I'm doing very good tonight. How are you doing? Brunswick train fan. Are you one of Nancy's friends, Eugene? Eugene, are you one of Nancy's friends? Yeah, Nancy's a friend of mine from Seattle, and she's a hobbyist, a train hobbyist, and she has a YouTube channel. So when I see the trains in somebody's thumbnail or in their name titles, then I thought, oh, that's somebody that Nancy brought along, right, to hang out. Okay, you guys, I'm going to call it a night, right? I'm grateful that I went to make a cup of coffee 10 minutes before midnight, that I could come in here and say, right, that I officially made it in. But yeah, that's where my head was at today. Absolutely kind of spread all over the place. But oh my goodness, the tidbits, good ones. Looking forward to experimenting with them, playing with them a little bit, and seeing if I can make them work for me before I bring them here and share them and see if they work for you. Okay, you guys, that's it for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. What day is it today? Wednesday? We'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.